host. So I'm very excited to present to you all the source of the double D. Here you go. Dungeons and Dragons. Believe it or not, we've never had that here before. So, Puzzle, tell us, where did this all begin? Why do you love it so much?
I gotta get the dungeon. I gotta get the glasses on. There we go. So Dungeons and Dragons. This game in and of itself, like even on my home planet, we have like a version of this called Daggers and Druagar, and you know, it's an amazing game. I really enjoy it, and you know, I've been playing this since high school, on and off, and you know, it's one of those really nice social games that you can just, you know, especially in the most recent edition of it, which it's on its 5th edition. It's been so easily accessible for anyone to just like pick up, learn a couple of the rules, and you know, you're off to the races. I used to play a lot on Earth, a lot with like different people at like a game store, and you know, I met a lot of friends doing that. And on top of that, it's just, you know, it's really gotten me through some tough times, and you know,
good.
I've kind of, you know, it's encouraged me to, you know, run my own, like people have, you know, encouraged me and whatnot to run my own Dungeons and Dragons games. And, you know, even through like, you know, there always is, you know, sometimes those hard times where you're just like, where you have a group and whatnot and things don't really, sometimes don't mesh out. But you know what, even through that, I still like, you know, stick with it, because you know, you'll always find a new group and whatnot. And even through the big world problem, you know, people just kind of, they were able to easily jump online and play with each other. It's like just something that just brings people together, and you know, you create a character, and I've created some very interesting characters. If you don't mind me sharing, I have had one character named Marigold Wiseacre, who is a small halfling. And you know, usually halflings are very cheery. You know, they're all about like, you know, the good life and whatnot. And you know, Marigold's about the good life, but she goes about it her own crazy, eccentric way. Essentially, she was a shadow sorcerer, and sorcerers are like, usually they gain their powers through some sort of either, you know, either some sort of bloodline or something happens to them.
Sure.
In Marigold's case, she had a near-death experience falling off a cliff, and you know, some shadowy entity came to her and was like, "Oh, dear child, what happened to you?" And you know, she's like, "Oh no, I died." And you know, from there, she, you know, this thing gave her power, her, you know, brought her back to life, and you know, gave her these weird shadowy powers. And she ended up going out in the best way or one of the coolest way possibles, essentially pulling a Gandalf on a dragon. And you know, Gandalf, where he like jumps off the bridge with, or where he like goes, "You shall not pass,"
against
like,
the Balrog,
down and defeats the Balrog. She did that with an ancient dragon, which probably is twice as powerful as a Balrog.
Ooh.
And so she's like falls into this pit with the thing, lands the killing blow. Meanwhile, the paladin is flying around on a hippogriff or something like that with like, "Oh, I'm super OP," you know, that you have that one guy in the party who's like min-maxed everything. And she's just like, "Lol, okay, if I'm gonna go out, I'm going out with a style." Throws down and just defeats the dragon, falling into the pit with him, you know, taking a ton of damage and just dying. The only thing that was kind of like the "really, bruh," was the DM kind of brought back the character like right afterwards, and I'm like, no, I would have been fine with, you know, not like, I should have, you know what, to be honest, that character, I should have just like been like, all right, well, I can just, you know, decline the resurrection. But yeah. But yeah, I've had so many of those fun characters. The only thing I'd say, I feel like I haven't really, you know,
Go on.
I haven't always finished campaigns, but I've always, you know, enjoyed the characters I've played. And that's one thing about, like, you know, Dungeons and Dragons. It's all about like escapism, and, you know, being able to just take, you know, step back from your normal life and whatnot, and either, you know, like tell a story or be the character in that story. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
nice,
kind of why I like it.
nice level of immersion, and like you said, and you can brings people together, and I'm so amazed and glad that this thing stuck with you and helped you through hard times. Even and you first discovered it in high school, huh? Did you know about it before high school, or was that really when you just started playing it? If that's not too asking too much.
I think in high school is when I first learned of it. That was 3.5 fifth edition, which is or 3.5. But yeah, there's always this like ongoing thing in like the Dungeons and Dragons community that uh third edition was like the 3.5. That edition was like the best, but like fourth edition was kind of meh. But fifth edition just they went balls to the wall. Just hey, you want to play? Get a D20 and some and some other dice, and boom, there you go. The rules are very simple.
Right. Like,
Although
yeah,
I
you
will
did
say
yes,
that
yes.
like Dungeons and Dragons is definitely, I would say, the gateway drug into like other tabletop games as well.
Ah.
Like this one called Lancer, which is essentially D&D with mechs. It's so cool.
Have you played some of that as well?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
And
you said that.
you know how they have?
Oh, go on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You go ahead.
You know how they have like class systems in Dungeons and Dragons and whatnot?
Yeah, sure.
Like you have the rogue and the paladin and those.
Right.
You just have those set, classes, and then they have archetypes. In this game, Lancer with the mechs, it's like, okay, here's your mech. You can customize it any way you want. You can have a mech that literally just pours out drones, or a mech that just will literally teleport around the battlefield doing all sorts of crazy things. But yeah, I'm sorry I'm not staying on Lancer, but it kind of has to pertain to Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure,
but,
yeah, no, it's not a
But yeah, there's so many ridiculous things you can do in that game. I want to one of these days I'm in a game for Lancer, but one of these days I want to do either like a podcast style of game where I run Lancer, or a or try to stream it. I think I have streamed games before on Twitch and YouTube, but I feel like the best the simplest, most way to do Dungeons and Dragons,
sure,
at least in my opinion, more or less, because the audience tends to listen more to your games, and yeah, it's good to have those maps and whatnot for characters, but I think like having that or like doing something on Discord would probably work and whatnot. And I'm always that's the other thing I'm trying to always do is like experimentation as well.
Sure.
Like with my Dungeons and Dragons tabletop streams. So
you actually have streamed
some.
Sorry,
went on a bit of a tangent.
No.
Yes, I have streamed before.
Yeah, I'm just saying, no, don't worry about it, Puzzle. This is about you to.
Yeah.
You're supposed to go on tangents here and why it's so awesome and amazing. That's the point of this corner. Talk about why you love it.
Yeah, there's even VTubers that are just like totally. That's like their whole shtick is Dungeons and Dragons and whatnot.
So did you were you like part of the characters, or did you ever DM? Are you like Dungeon Master?
No, yeah, I DM. Well, my first game that I did was on YouTube, and what I did was like, since I was still like prepping and trying to experiment into things, I was actually the player. Meanwhile, someone else was kind of DMing their story. So I had the stream controls and whatnot. I'd figure out what the hell I'm doing.
Sure.
But that went on for about 3 to 4 sessions, and then after that, I kind of went into my own thing. What game did I start, the guys? Yeah, I actually started with a different tabletop game, which was a little bit confusing to do. It's a game called Flying Circus, which is essentially this a game called what's the best way to describe it? Think like those Studio Ghibli movies that have to do with like flying and whatnot, like Perot. I cannot remember the name of it, but like it's this post-apocalyptic World War One kind of thing where like all of these cities were essentially like gassed and whatnot, and you have these biplanes that are essentially like World War One technology. So they're absolutely terrifying to fly. But the system itself was a little confusing and whatnot, and I had,
Yeah.
it was really cool how it did it, but I was like, what?
Yeah.
How do I run these games?
So it's very cool.
But-
There's a lot of moving parts. And,
But yeah, there was a lot of moving parts, and then I went to another game called Shadowrun, which worked out pretty well and whatnot.
Nice.
And then I went back to kind of like back to basics with Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, I haven't really done it recently. I need to figure. I'm trying to like restructure right now as far as that goes.
Sure. Do you have some others? Do you have you gathered some people who'd be interested, you think, to join you and part of your campaign? Obviously you're going to DM. So.
Yeah, I've got some interested parties and whatnot.
Good.
But
glad to hear that.
But yeah, I'm just trying to scratching my head, being like, okay, do I just do it on Discord as like a stage, or do I,
actually stream it?
Because like the thing is that unfortunately I've been putting a lot of effort into other things and other projects I can't really talk about right now. But stay tuned into my Twitter.
Stay tuned.
Like seriously, I can't.
Yeah, he can't.
I wish I could talk about this, but I can't. I wish, but I
keep your eyes sharp on that Twitter sphere, folks. That's where you'll hear from it first.
Yes.
Yes, indeed, Chia. No spoilers. Oh, that's spectacular. So I didn't realize that.
Only Machichu knows, but he's not gonna say anything, right? Right? You're not gonna say anything, right?
Right, Machichu? You're
not gonna say anything, right?
You're a good mom.
All right, anyways, that's my whole thing about Dungeons and Dragons there.
Awesome. Hey, folks, give it up for Dungeons and Dragons here. It meant a lot to Puzzle. Many good reasons to it. I don't have to go over them. You were here for it. But thank you, Dungeons and Dragons. This is something I love how you talk about this. I really could feel how much you enjoy it, and I think it's kind of cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's even cool that that you didn't even really DM the first time you decided to stream this. You went to other tabletops, so that's kind of wild. So,
yeah, I would. Last closing thing.
Go on.
Dungeons and Dragons is like the gateway drug to
the rest.
Tabletop role-playing games. It really is.
Yep. So you start here, and then you go into and you move on from there. But you got to start somewhere. If you're going to start somewhere, folks, start with D&D. All right. Once again, thank you, Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you. That was a lovely presentation for you.
Thank you.
Puzzle. Very, very nice.
That was literally on the fly.